a couple of things here to note. Look at question number 18. When he starts upstream, who accompanies him on the trip? No, they're going toward Kurtz. They're trying to find Kurtz, and he's not going to be hard to find. They just have to go till they run out of river. Basically, you're going to keep sailing. So it's the manager, the guy that his only virtue was he never got sick. Remember him? He made people uneasy. He didn't have any insides. He was a hollow man. And 3 or 4 pilgrims. And then it asked you about the crew. And number 19, who is the crew?
They're cannibals.
Cannibals. And this isn't a question, but I want you to look back on page 90 about about 12 lines from the top of the page, the word ivory. Do you see that? About 12 lines from the top, the word ivory. Highlight ivory, and then about 6 lines below that, the word crept. You'll highlight that, and underneath, literally underneath it, the word crawling, and then straight down a couple of lines is the word crawled, and over on the right, the next line crawled again, and then 3 lines also crawled, and then crawled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times the word crawled is used, and the word crept, which is basically the same thing, is used once. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What does the word crawled suggest? They're talking about the steamship crawling up toward the heart of darkness. But what does it suggest? What kinds of things crawl? Animals crawl. What? Bugs crawl. What else crawls? When would a human crawl?
If they're a baby.
Yes. Or if they're trying to,
Be sneaky.
yes. Or if crawling also suggests subservience, doesn't it? You know what I mean by that? Being beneath something, or being something is greater. We're going to see a scene when we do meet Kurtz, and we see Kurtz crawling, and he's crawling toward a witch doctor. It suggests that, doesn't it? They're crawling toward the heart of darkness. It almost suggests a kind of worship. So even the boat is using the terms crawling, which means they're going very slowly, right? Anyway, that, Aurora, would you like to read? And it's a really, really long paragraph. It goes on for a page and a half, but you can stop anytime. And Delaney or I'll pick up.
The earth seemed unearthly. We are accustomed to look upon the shackled form of a conquered monster, but there you could look at a thing monstrous and free. It was unearthly, and the men were not unhuman. Well, that was the worst of it. That was the worst of it. This suspicion of their not being inhuman, it would come slowly to one. They howled and leaped and spun and made horrid faces, but what thrilled you was just the thought of their humanity. Like yours, the thought of your remote kinship with this wild and passionate uproar. Ugly. Yes, it was ugly enough, but if you were man enough, you would admit to yourself that there was in you just the faintest trace of a response to the terrible frankness of that noise. A dim suspicion, there being a meaning in it, which you were so remote from the night of first ages, could comprehend. And why not? The mind of man is capable of anything, because everything is in it, all the past as well as all the future. There was there after all. What was there after all? Joy, fear, sorrow, devotion, velour, rage, who can tell? But truth stripped of its cloak of time. Let the fool gape and shudder. The man knows and can look on without a wink, but he must at least be as much of a man as these on the shore. He must meet the truth with his own truth stuff, with his own unborn strength. Principles won't do. Acquisitions, clothes, pretty rags that would fly off at the first gray shake. No, you want a deliberate belief. An appeal to me in this fiendish row is there. Very well, I hear, have met, but I have a voice too, and for good or evil, mine is the speech that cannot be silenced. Of course, a fool, what with sheer fright shore for a howl and a dance. Well, no, I didn't. Fine cinnamons, you say. Fine cinnamons be hanged. I had no time. I had to mess about with the white lead and strips of woolen blanket, helping to put bandages on those leaky steam pipes, I tell you. I had to watch the steering and circumvent those snags and get the tin pot along by hook or by crook. There was surface truth enough in these things to save a wiser man. And between whiles I had to look after the savage who was firing. He was an improved specimen. He could fire up a vertical boiler. He was there below me, and upon my word, to look at him was as indifying as seeing a dog in a parody of breeches and a feather hat, walking on his hind legs. A few months of training had done for that really fine chap. He squinted at the steam gauge and at the water gauge with an evident effort of intrepidity, and he had filed teeth too, the poor devil, and the wool of his page shaved into queer patterns and 3 ornamental scars on each of his cheeks. He ought to have been clapping his hands and stamping his feet on the bank, instead of which he was hard at work, enthralled a strange witchcraft, full of improving knowledge. He was useful because he had been instructed, and what he knew was this, that should the water in the transparent thing disappear, the evil spirit inside the boiler would get angry through the greatness of his thirst, and take a terrible vengeance. So he sweated and fired up and watched the glass fearfully, with an impromptu charm made of rags tied in his arm and a piece of polished bone as big as a watch stuck flatways through his lower lip. While the wooded banks slipped past us slowly, the short noise was left behind, the interminable miles of silence, and we crept on towards Kurtz. But the snags were thick, the water was treacherous and shallow, the boiler seemed indeed to have a sulky devil in it, and thus near the firemen nor had any time to peer into our creepy thoughts.
Thank you. Look at question number 20. He looks at the natives along the river, and he calls them monstrous and free, unearthly. They were not inhuman. It says they howled and leaped and spun and made hard faces. They thrilled you. Your remote kinship with this wild and passionate uproar, yes, it was ugly enough. But if you were honest, if you were man enough, you would admit to yourself that there was in you just the faintest trace of response to the terrible frankness of the noise. Question is, what does he discover that he and all men have in common with the natives? He sees people like them. He's English and he's more respectable, but he sees these men probably half naked or completely naked, and they were howling and leaping and spinning. They were alive, and he sees something attractive in that. So he sees they had come to bring, remember, civilizations to these people, and yet he sees in their uncivilized, primitive behavior something he likes, because he can relate to that. So they are like him. They have in common that wildness and that passion that these men have. Theirs has just been controlled. That is Marlowe. All right, and so what keeps him from jumping overboard and being a part of it? Why doesn't he jump over and just kind of be a part of what he's seeing? What is he doing? What is his job on board this steamship? He's the captain. So everything, the boiler, the steerage, everything he's responsible for. So he's too busy to do that. And that's another important point. Work is civilized. Work is good for us. It keeps us from maybe being our worst selves if we're involved in something work-related and useful. That's why work is so important. Have you seen what downtown San Francisco looks like, or maybe big cities everywhere, but if you've seen stories about the homeless people, many of them are, mentally, unstable. New York City's the same way. There's something not right and uncivilized about that, about being not working and having large numbers of people who aren't working. There are a lot of reasons why people become homeless, which would be a good thesis, by the way. But it's still that we are not doing something about it says something about our culture. And so work is the opposite of what these people are doing stuff. What's the other group that he doesn't admire? He actually kind of respects the natives. Who does he not respect? The Pilgrims and the Europeans that are lazy and useless and wasting time and not accomplishing anything. These natives are more alive than those people. And remember the two images, the flabby devil, that's the Europeans, and the passionate devil, that would say be the natives. All right, Delaney, would you notice here, you can highlight it, some 50 miles below the interstation. Would you highlight that? Because he takes a great effort to tell us where he is. Like, they're going to the interstation. That's the goal. That's where Kurtz is. And he'll tell us exactly where he is, or 50 miles. Then later he'll say there's 6 miles, or 8 miles, and just on the next page. Then there's 3.5 miles, or maybe it was 1.5 miles. Why do you think, what's the effect of his doing that? Of telling us how close they are? For what? See, exactly. That's the whole point of the story, is to find Kurtz. So it creates suspense. We're just 50 miles away. We're just 6 miles away. It increases the intensity to know they're that close. So they're 50 miles away.
Some 50 miles away below the interstation, we came upon a hut of reeds, an inclined melancholy pole, with the unrecognizable taters of what had been a flag of some sort flying from it. A neatly stacked wood pile. This was unexpected. We came to the bank, and on the stack of the firewood found a flat piece of board with some faded pencil writing on it. When
Deciphered,
it said, "We're free." Hurry up approached cautiously. There was a signature, but it was
illegible.
illegible, not Kurtz. A much longer word. Hurry up. Where? Up the river. Approached cautiously. He had not done so, but the warning could not have been meant for the place where it could be found after approach. Something was wrong above, but what and how much? That was the question. We commented adversely upon the
Imbecility.
of the telegraph style. The bush around 7 would not let us look very far either.
Okay, pause just a minute. Let's just make a note. Look at question 21. Here, 50 miles away, they find a hut. And again, I know this because I wrote it in my book. See, the only way these are helpful, but this is more helpful. So I use a highlighter, I use a red pen, I use pencil, anything to indicate what's going on there. They're 50 miles and they find a hut, a flag, a pole, wood, and a note. All those things are there. What does the note say?
Look free, hurry up, approach cautiously.
Yes, the wood, hurry, approach cautiously. So if you're approaching cautiously, what are they warning you of?
You could be attacked.
So there's a problem ahead. And so all of this is designed to protect and help them get there. So you can keep reading.
Not let us look very far either. The torn curtain of red twill hung in the doorway of the hut and flapped sadly in our faces. The dwelling was haunted, but we could see as a white man had lived there not very long ago. There remained a rude table, a plank on 2 posts,
A
a
heap.
heap of rubbish in a dark corner. By the door I
Okay, highlight the book. You're gonna spend some time talking about this book.
It had lost its covers and the pages had thumbed into a state of extremely dirty softness. But the back had been lovingly stitched afresh with white cotton thread, which looked clean. It was an extraordinary find. Its title was an inquiry to some points of seamanship by a man Towson, some such name, master in the Majesty's Navy. The matter looked dreary reading enough, with illustrative diagrams and repulsive tables of figures. The copy was 60 years old. I handled this amazing
Antiquity.
with the greatest possible tenderness, lest it should be dissolved in my hands. Within Towson and Towser was inquiring earnestly into breaking a strain of ships, chains, and tackle, and such other matters. Not very enthralling book, but at the first glance you could see there was a singleness of intention, an honest concern for the right way of going to work, which made these humble pages throughout so many years luminous with another than a professional light. The simple old sailor with his talk of chains and purchases made me forget the jungle and the pilgrims and the delicious sensation of having come upon something unmistakably real. Such a book being there was wonderful enough, but still outstanding were the notes in the margin and plainly referring to the text. I couldn't believe my eyes. They were in
Cipher.
Yes, it looked like a cipher. Fancy a man lugging with him a book of the description to this nowhere and studying it, and making notes in cipher. That it was an extravagant mystery.
Okay, look at question number 22. This book is a very dull book. It's a book about seamanship, and it has lots of numbers in it, and it's not a novel, not anything exciting. It was just a book about seamanship, how to captain a ship, how to steer or whatever a ship. So why was he so impressed with it? All right, let me read it to you. It says, not a very enthralling book, about halfway down, but at first glance you could see there a singleness of intention, honest concern for the right way of going to work. Highlight those. It's singleness of purpose or intention, honest concern, right way of going to work. Then it said, the simple old sailor with his talk of chains and purchases made me forget the jungle and the pilgrims and the delicious sensation of having come upon unmistakably real. Sorry, I was thinking it was 10-2, but we can answer that question. It's real, it has a purpose, and that's different from what he's feeling in the jungle. It's like there's an unrealness, kind of a dreamlike quality, and it's real. It's something you put your hands on, and it accomplishes something.